Good evening. Today is Tuesday, March 7th, 2023, and the time is 7 p.m. My name is Fred Chase. I will call to order this meeting of the Bridgewater Town Council. If the councilors would please join me in a salute to our flag.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Thank you. I would like to remind all in attendance and those remotely participating that this meeting is being aired live and recorded for future broadcasts. The council has been made aware of the recent passing of a former Bridgewater resident, a veteran. That's Mr. Bruce Novak. He had passed away on February 27th, 2023. Mr. Novak served in the United States Navy during the Vietnam War. He served as a member as well of the Town Advisory Board for many years and was active in many local charitable organizations. I'd like to ask your indulgence, please, if you would join me in a moment of silence in memory of Mr. Novak. I thank you very much. First item on our agenda this evening, announcements. We have none. We do have I will ask for an approval vote with respect to the meeting minutes of February 21st, 2023.
So moved. Second.
We have motion for approval and a second. Any discussion? And seeing none, if we could have please a roll call vote.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
I wasn't here last week. I'll abstain our last meeting.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
6 in favor, 0 opposed, 1 abstention.
Thank you very much. There are no proclamations this evening. We can move directly to citizen open forum. I would ask if there are any citizens who wish to address the council, kindly step forward to the podium and introduce yourself by name and identify your street. We ask that you kindly limit your remarks to no more than 3 minutes. Are there any citizens who would care to address the council? Yes, please.
Put yours on mute.
Thank you very much, President. My name is Lou Stone. I live on Briarwood Circle in High Pond Estates. At your last meeting, we had a resident from High Pond who was here and talked about the brown water problem. I don't know whether it has been changed, whether people are still experiencing it or not. It has been kind of an intermittent situation. But as Mrs. Anderson stated at the last meeting, when her water turns brown at her particular location on High Pond Drive, she has to run out and buy water. She can't bathe, she can't cook, she can't clean clothes. It was a serious issue. Now, we don't seem to know as residents there if the new water plant is going to change that situation or it is not. I believe she asked if somebody would contact her and give her some information about the overall situation. She has not received any calls, and I am here tonight to bring this forward again. And you could, someone from the water department, or I will certainly leave it up to the council to determine who that should be. But I think we need to get some more information. And I'd be happy to be the contact person if that's what the council would like, certainly Mrs. Anderson. I thank you very much for the opportunity. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. Are there other citizens who care to step forward to address the council? Anyone else for a citizen open forum? And seeing none, we'll move ahead. Thank you very much. There are no appointments to be considered this evening, nor hearings. We do have a licensing matter before the council. This is petition P 2023-025, change of manager, Bridgewater Citizens Club. The Bridgewater Citizens Club has petitioned to change the manager of the alcohol establishment from Richard Coakley to Kenneth Brooks. I make note of the fact that the required approvals have been obtained, and they are identified to us in our package this evening. And I think the matter can be considered by us now. I would entertain a motion for approval.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? And seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Sure. Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
And Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
7 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. We have a presentation this evening. We will welcome Dr. Carlton Hunt to preside on the subject of energy aggregation, and a topic I think we're all eagerly awaiting to learn much more about. So with no further ado, I'll turn it over to Dr.
don't know
Carlton
how.
Hunt.
Thank you. We've got a couple of technology things we're going to deal with.
I made you co-host. You have to start your video.
Okay.
There you are. Now you have to share your screen.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure things out here. I hate this. Okay, that's up. Now, how do I share my screen?
Michael knows how to do that good.
I've got it up here on my computer, but I don't have it up on the screen. Apologize.
He has to share the screen. Facebook video is not working either.
It's working. There. That's, okay. Screen share.
It's working.
Nobody knows what he's doing. I like it. Thank you. Some time ago, I was approached by a citizen who's here in the audience about energy aggregation. I did some communications with a number of people, and the town manager had asked the Energy Committee to do some things on this in the past. And therefore, I was asked and proud to present a presentation on electrical energy in Bridgewater, specifically on aggregation. I don't know what's showing up there, okay. Basically, I want to go through a little bit of detail here because I think we need to have basis and background, and then a little bit about what the town policies and actions are, goals, some concepts. And Councilor Moore had sent me 7 questions that were extremely helpful in terms of answering questions that I think you and the citizens all have on this issue. And then there's some pros and cons and opportunities that we'll talk about. So beginning at the end, the comprehensive master plan that was passed in 2022 has a policy 8.71, which is a commit to environmental sustainability in all town of Bridgewater policies. One of those sub pieces was to investigate and promote alternative energy production and storage on town-owned parcels. I'm not going to talk about that tonight because we've already used a little bit of time, but there are some opportunities for solarizing town properties and the district properties. There's another section that says recommendation that states explore the feasibility of adopting rooftop solar on large commercial properties. That's a down the road to do thought. The Energy Committee was given the goals of developing a guidance to bring Bridgewater to near zero net carbon by 2050, to work collaboratively with other committees on these issues, and to develop an educational document to inform citizens of what we can and can't do or could do, should do. The goals deliverable was a report to the town council, also a list of grant opportunities, and a deliverable as a public education program. In part, this presentation tonight addresses all of those goals. I'm specifically focusing on municipal energy aggregation and community solar. So we'll go through some background. We'll look at the questions that the counselor provided to us and some supply alternatives, and then the potential for solar installations on publicly owned properties, and then we'll go to questions. I did have some more input on this presentation, but like I said, I think we should hold off on it for a little bit. But it is in your packet, so you can get a heads up on that. It has to do with a stretch code and special code zoning for energy issues. So starting at the beginning, again, the overall energy use in the United States is provided by the IEA. It's basically the U.S. Energy Information Center. That particular center has hundreds of reports and graphs and figures about energy of all types in the United States. The basic point here is that residential, commercial, transportation, and industry make up the pie. This is all over all energy types, and residential is about 21%. This graph is a time graph going back to when I was 4 years old, and it shows the upswing in energy consumption in the US by those four sectors. The particular sector that we're interested in here is the green one, which is residential. And you can see that it grew and grew and grew, and it's somewhat flattened out in terms of total use and within each sector over the last few years. So the question is, how much energy does an average US household consume? Based on the information that's available on the web, average US household consumes about 877 kilowatt hours per month, or about 10,000 plus kilowatt hours per year. And this is 2019 data. The consumption varies a bit from 700 to a large amount. And then there's many factors that affect the consumption and use: location, household size, how the home is heated, season, et cetera. So what drives the cost of electricity? I think this is really critical. And then what can we do to lower electric bills? So the US energy rates basically are demand-driven, price-driven, which drives price, and then the consumers, however they handle the consumption and reduce consumption. So demand contributes to the cost of supplying electricity, contributes to the cost. So how much does the US at all those sectors use? And it's usually highest in the afternoon during peak hours. So you get a daily cycle. Actually, it's minute by minute cycle. The wholesale price of electricity reflects the real-time cost. In other words, the pricing is done at a very finite scale in terms of how much cost per minute essentially is put into the grid. Basically, changes in price reflect variations on demand, the availability of generation sources, what those sources are, and power plant availability. So if a power plant's in Colorado, we might pay more money here if we were using that energy. Basically, the consumer pays prices based on a seasonal average, and we'll see that in the National Grid's most recent supply cost. And there are some incentives that utilities can offer customers in terms of pricing, but that's really, it's peak demand pricing, but that's a little bit beyond this presentation. So the question is, how can residential and commercial electricity costs be reduced? The first one is to employ conservation techniques using energy efficient appliances, insulation, and construction of energy efficient housing. And Mass Save, if you don't know it, is a tiny adder on your electric bill that enables people to go to Mass Save and get their house insulated, potentially get better efficiency in appliances, that kind of thing. I use Mass Save to fully insulate my house, and it now has a HERS rating, which is basically a measure of how much energy it consumes, to 45, which is the target that the town has right now. My house was built in 1956. So the other thing is to install alternative electrical sources on your home or in businesses, i.e. Rooftop solar, or you can purchase electricity from an alternative source supplier. There's two types: community solar, which is in yellow here, and then the municipal energy aggregation, which is the subject of this talk for the most part. And the choice is typically the consumer as community solar, and it's the municipality, you guys as this board, town council for the municipality. So what is municipality choice for energy? The energy aggregation under the Massachusetts law and regulations basically enables municipal energy that provides residents and businesses with more competitive rates, longer term, more stable source supply costs. Potentially, electrical rates are lower. They are consistently lower right now, but it's not guaranteed in the long run. And then the more renewable electricity in the system and optional products can affect how the New England renewable energy is used. I apologize, I'm struggling a little bit because I have the screen blocking half of my words. So basically, this table provides some information on aggregation rates within the Commonwealth, particularly some various towns that are around us. I point out that National Grid's residential basic service costs is $0.33891 dollars per kilowatt hour. And that's in play from November 1, 22 through this April 30th. It changes again as the season changes. If you see in this table, on the right side is municipality. There's a consultant that we'll talk more about. There's a period that the aggregation is in play, like for example, December to 22 to July. And then on the right is the price that these consumers or municipalities are paying. And it ranges from roughly 29 cents down to about 14.7 per thousand. That's the range that you could potentially get if the town and you voted, specifically you voted, to go join aggregation. A little bit more detail on this is you can see a range in the prices, 13.1 all the way up to 19 cents. That's all driven by the terms of the condition. This one's six months, some are 36 months, some are 24 months, and it's all related to who's supplying it. So the alternate, I'm sorry, I just can't see this. There. Alternative supplier rates increase as the contract terms increase. So when you have a short-term contract, they can respond more quickly to the current rates and give you better rates. If it's longer term, they have to look at their risk and look at the long-term average. Rates are locked in during a term. While National Grid may do this, these rates stay in a constant amount for the term of the contract. The savings depend on the contract terms and the supplier. So the rates can be, as we saw before, can be really significant, up to 44, 60%. So Councilor Moore had these 7 wonderful questions. And basically the question 1 is, what is energy aggregation under Massachusetts law and regulations? Municipal aggregation is the method by which local and county governments can buy electricity on behalf of their consumers that reside within their borders. So it's city, town specific, it could be county, but right now we're talking about Bridgewater as a city. It's possible due to a 1997 law that changed how you purchased your supplies. Usually it came from companies like National Grid or Eversource. This law changed it so people could buy from their own source, whatever source they wanted. Basically, it allows, as I said, consumers to buy electricity from the provider of power of their choice. There's a great guidance document that's out there that was developed way back when. As I said, local, municipal, or county governments can aggregate the energy load. There is support provided by the Department of Energy Resources, DOER, and they are assigned the responsibility of supporting towns. And this guide provides a lot of the details. So how does a municipality create a municipal aggregation plan? First, the municipality must vote to initiate the municipal aggregation program. If it's not voted, it's not in play. It's up to the consumer to figure out what they want to do. Prepare a municipal aggregation plan in consultation with the Department of Energy Resources, and oftentimes using a consultant. 3, allow an opportunity for citizens to review the plan and comment and possibly change. And finally, you have to submit an aggregation plan that gets approved by the Department of Public Utilities. This is just a flow chart that repeats what I just said. It's got a little bit more detail. It's pretty old because it has the terms that are DTE, and really it's Department of Public Utilities now. And there's lots of other information sources that I put here. And there's a couple of pathways that you can follow. So what is energy aggregation continuing? It's basically aggregation participants receive one bill from National Grid, and it names the supplier under the supplier service. Aggregation only affects the electrical supply section of the National Grid bill. There are 3 parts with some little smaller parts like mass save. And grid, National Grid in our case, who's our supply, our transmission and they provide all the electrical lines. It's neutral. They have to do what they need to do under regulation, and the supplier gets named, and that's how they bill it out for that supplier. So basically, there are 3 things that go on in terms of electric bills: generation, transmission, and distribution. Distribution is those really big 13,000 KEV lines. Then it steps down to the power lines that are on our streets, and then it steps down through transformer to your house. So the risks are basically, 1, service and infrastructure risks are unchanged. So the question was, how does this change things? It doesn't change a thing. Only the price that you pay for the supply. The worst case scenarios, you may only pay a few cents less than the grid supply rate. Maybe the contracts could be longer than as effective for the best prices. Those are all managed through the contracts. Best case scenario is the cost of electricity generation can be as much as 40 to 60% lower, like we saw just before. What services are improved with these models? What goes away? Nothing changes. Everything, basic services are unchanged. Nothing goes away except possibly the high cost of electricity to a lower cost. Looking at the prior 30 years, have energy prices fluctuated? Yes, they fluctuated in 2 ways. Seasonally, this is 2020. This is 2000 out to a current price, and you can see the constant rise with some plateaus and recently a much higher price rise. And then you see here the price of retail. And in this particular one, the upper curve here is the residential. Residents pay the most for the supply. How would similar future fluctuations impact our residents moving forward? Grid continues to transmit everything, and their costs could go up or down, but probably look to be higher depending on the mix of supplies they draw that energy from. The cost of generation are going to remain variable and are increasing over time. Under energy aggregation, supply rates are constant month over month for the term of the contract. They're not fluctuating seasonally. These could be 3 years of a flat rate. The mix of generation types, i.e. fossil fuel, solar, wind, gas, et cetera, will continue to impact the rates. So there's still a lot of things that go on in terms of the rate generation. Electricity price variability by consumer type. Basically, retail electricity prices are usually the highest for residential and commercial and the lowest for industry. Industry, because they can power up with much higher, not 110 like we do, or 220. They can go to 480, and that means they can get their energy at a much lower cost because they're using more, and also the transmission costs are less. Price by locality. Electric prices vary by locality based on the availability of power plants. Where are they within your region? The fuels that we've already said, the local fuel costs, and the pricing regulations. And this is just a little bit more detail. It's a little bit dated, but it's information. I put the detail in here primarily so that the public had access to a lot of the things that are in my head that I'm not doing as good a job as I'd like to present. But anyway, what are the alternatives to this type of program that might give residents similar benefits? Residential, solar, wind, et cetera. Well, first of all, you can solarize your property with roof mount and otherwise. There's tons and tons of incentives to put rooftop solar in houses. You can purchase community solar. And community solar basically is another option. And then you can also do things like small wind generators, et cetera, and some innovative things. The problem we have in Bridgewater is there's no ordinance for wind generators, however small or however large. And I'm an advocate for small residential power sources, like one of the developers in town has in play up at the Burlington, Vermont airport right now. It can generate enough energy for a house in a year using winds as low as 5 miles an hour. Community solar, again, it's energy generated by a solar field, put into the grid. The consumer as an individual purchases this power at a lower rate, and everything bill-wise flows through National Grid. So the cons of community solar are basically, the pros are individual voluntary decision by the individual meter holder. Purchasing from a community solar supplier, so you're buying from a larger field, you're actually buying your energy from a small portion of that particular solar field. Reduced electrical rates are pretty much a given, and then the transmission goes over National Grid, like we repeatedly said. The cons are, it doesn't have the buying power that a whole municipality is. So a consumer solar field maybe have 10 to 100, 200 customers. The municipality has every meter in it. So that power of buying, that purchasing power, goes a long way towards reducing prices. How do other towns typically make this decision? Ballot board, et cetera. It's the decision in this case is made by the city government. You guys. In either case, the public has say in what you want to do, but it's only after those steps that we talked about before actually occur. Can you opt out? Yes, absolutely. Anybody that is brought into this power agreement can opt out. You may have it already solar on your roof. You can opt out. You may already buy community solar. You can opt out, but you may not get the best rates. So basically, if you opt out, you are responsible for finding your own energy source. All meters are included unless the owner wants their electricity from a competitive supplier other than the one of the municipality. Those choosing to have on-site solar or other renewable energy options don't have to give up those up. That's the point. Everybody's in unless you want out. If you get out, it's up to you. What's the commitment or duration term? The supply contract periods we saw earlier was 6 months, but typically what I've seen is 2 to 3 years. Terms avoid excessive long-term commitments to a volatile energy market. It's going like this, you're going like this. And then the municipality negotiates the aggregation renewal contract. So the one, maybe it's a downside, is that the town departments and procurement officer has to be the one dealing with getting the right prices and negotiating with suppliers and consultants and all that stuff. But the citizen doesn't have to do that. We leave it on one man's shoulders. A number of neighboring towns already have aggregate electrical energy supply. West Bridgewater, for example, has been in the paper recently. Rochester, Plymouth, Halifax, Easton, Abington, Pembroke, Falmouth, all have, and there are a total of 175 municipalities that have opted in already out of 304 eligible communities. Communities that get their solar from like Taunton has, that's not an eligible supplier, but everybody else is. So what are our options? Well, we could pursue solarization of municipal owned property, either as ground mounts or on parking lots. And I'll tell you why we should be thinking about this. It's an attractive source for community solar, if nothing else, but it's also a place where aggregators can get their energy from. And it could bring revenue to town. Using the town attorney's favorite word, hypothetical, annual municipal Bridgewater Regional School District, they're their own municipality. Revenue, if small and large scale facility opportunities are fully developed, could see a revenue as high as $500,000 to $600,000, depending on a number of things, lease rates, construction costs, all that kind of thing. And the district itself could actually put some solar on its parking lots. And the parking lot at the middle school where we vote, hypothetically, could potentially provide enough energy for 2 schools the size of the Williams School. That would mean that they're getting their energy pretty much at no cost. So I have some recommendations. One is, if you still have questions, engage the Green Communities District Coordinator. 2, engage OCPC, which I believe has some support structure for energy aggregation. 3 is you all vote, and the town reviews and engages in energy aggregate energy process. So I'm going to leave it there at questions. I do have some other things, but I'm going to leave it at questions. If the screen will work.
Are there questions for Dr. Hunt? Councilor Gallagher.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you very much for that presentation. So you mentioned in the beginning that National Grid, which I think everybody in the town has, as we are a National Grid town. So on April 30th, that 0.333 is going to change. Most likely, it's going to go down. Most likely, but we don't know that. Because I think the November to April is probably a winter rate. So, I mean, someone like me, if I wanted to go to this program, to go do that, if the town voted to allow that, I would wait and see what National Grid does in April 30th.
Well,
See what the, I mean, how do we know? I mean, does National Grid seem to do things 6 months at a time, or have they done longer terms like that? Will it be April to November? Is that what their next, or May 1st to November 1st? Would that be their next?
a couple of things in your question. Yes, I think they do it every 6 months. Some of the things I've read is summertime used to be, because of air conditioners, that kind of thing, the higher rate months. But recently it's been changing over to winter time. So it possibly could go down or it could go up.
Yeah.
We don't know. But the other thing I will say to that is this process is not tomorrow you vote, it's in. It's if you voted for it as a council soon, that sets a process in place where you have to go through those steps that I outlined before. You need to get a consultant, you need to go through a process of developing the plan, you need to go through a public process, and then the DPU takes some time to review it. Recently, that review process has taken up to a year. That is an issue that is being addressed by many people at the legislative level.
So the town is not under any specific contract with National Grid.
The
For-
town
for
is
the
not,
municipalities.
right now, the town buys it from the grid,
Right.
whether it's National Grid or, I can't think of the word, there is a group that supplies slightly lower rates, and we are on that program.
Okay.
I will remind you that the town purchased most of its municipal power, our buildings, from a solar field here in town, and we're getting about 85% relative to the grid rates of our energy, about 85% of our use is supplied by that solar field. The rate is much lower. The rate is a little over 12 cents per kilowatt.
So this would be more so for the residential.
This is for the people.
Right.
Residential and consumers.
Right.
The consumer businesses, not necessarily the industrial, but the consumer
Right.
people.
I think it's something should be pursued, yeah.
I think it's a fantastic opportunity, and I'm sorry if I'm struggling a little bit with my questions. I'm typically not so nervous.
Are there other questions for Dr. Hunt? Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Eric Moore.
Thank you, Mr. President. And thank you for the presentation. I think this is exciting for a few reasons. I think one thing for me is just sort of recognizing that as our town grows, we have much more buying power with the suppliers, both for the town and for the residents. So I like the fact that we're starting to look at ways that we can leverage that buying power to help the community. And I think this is a great first step towards that general theme. I also like the fact that as leaders in the town, we can be drivers that are actively negotiating better rates versus I think kind of the situation we're in right now where we're passengers that just sort of follow the market. And I think this year in particular, a lot of residents saw big spikes in their home budgets, right? And in some cases, I think people were struggling to find ways to pay these bills through the winter. And I think for me, being able to negotiate a rate that makes that budget predictable and reliable year over year probably has a lot of value for our residents. So I think similar to other comments, I would love to see us learn more about this and continue to pursue it. I think if we can negotiate rates, I have to imagine that they would be better than what we see on the bills. And I think we could do it over a duration where people could have predictable budgets instead of variable budgets in the winter. And then just the second maybe comment or question is, I also like the idea of solar parking lot canopies. I think we have a lot of paved space in town. And I think if you've seen some of the designs now for those canopies, they essentially provide rain coverage for cars and have a lot of benefits while providing the electricity that we just heard about. And so maybe the question would be, if we wanted to also, in addition, kind of pursue some of these solar options, what would the right next step to be for that type of project?
Yes, Dr. Hunt.
Thank you, Councilor Moore. I have another PowerPoint that's even more detailed than this one on all town-owned parcels and parking lots and the district parcels that I've got the acreage, I've got the rate, the amount of energy that the fireworks circus solar field supplies. So I've got grounding in terms of how much energy locally could come into town through solar. And that's an older field now, so it's not the latest panels. I'm happy to share that with anyone down the road, but it is, like I said, lease money and tax money can come in from those improvements. At least that's what the assessor tells me. So there is an opportunity for revenue for the town at the same time helping the residents with their rates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there further questions for Dr. Hunt? I'd like to ask one myself, if I may, please, Carlton. I'm wondering, you're suggesting, if I believe, if I interpret your remarks correctly, that we can attack this from both sides. We can pursue additional solar as well as contemplate approval for any energy aggregation?
Yes, it's a two-pronged thing, but there's a little bit dissociated. One is for the town to generate revenue through solarization of parking lots and several large open properties. So that's the revenue side. How that energy comes into the consumers in Bridgewater is another question, which is the aggregation question. But they're parallel paths as far as I'm concerned, but somewhat distinct.
And just a question about the providers of energy aggregation. You indicated there, just on one of your slides, that there are several. I know that there are quite a few others. And I'm wondering, what kinds of concerns and what kind of leverage do municipalities have with respect to negotiation with the various, I'll call them vendors? Do you have any sense as to, for example, whether we might have any particular advantages with one over another, without naming any, but how that negotiation might proceed?
I don't have any particular insight. I do know that I've been in touch with two people that help with aggregation. I think you would have to put out a competitive procurement for that kind of consulting help. And then the other question is putting together, and I think there's two things going on here. One is the aggregation question. The other one is, how do we go about solarizing our properties? That's a technical question that we need some expertise beyond what I have. So those two pathways, as far railroad tracks, basically need to be looked at. I think it's up to you guys to set direction.
Are there likely to be some proposals forthcoming from the Energy Committee?
We are advisory. This is my advice right now. My committee is of three. One person has not yet signed in. Therefore, I passed this information past them, and they're very much, and their comments and people that I have talked to and they have talked to are very much in favor of aggregation. The solarization question, that requires a lot more digging.
Very good. Yes, Councilor Lindy.
Thank you very much for the presentation. My question is, I happen to live in a condo and we have all sorts of restrictions on what we can and can't do. 100 different pages of it. I can't do any solar, unfortunately. I wish I could at least put a solar canopy on my deck out back, but that's not allowed. But I pay my own electric bill, but I don't know if there's any restrictions on condos or anything like that. Would you?
As I understand it, it's whoever has a meter that they are responsible for paying the cost is eligible.
Thank you.
So an apartment complex, a condo complex, a 5-bedroom house, commercial entities are all eligible to be in this program, as far as I understand.
Okay, because I called Mass Save and they told me they can't even talk to me because I'm in a condo,
That's something I have not heard about. I will take it up.
which is unfortunate because I would love to have insulation like you're talking about that you have at your own home.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I see none. I want to thank you very much, Dr. Hunt. It's been very informative.
You're welcome.
We would move on to the town manager's report, and I would ask Mr. Dutton for his comments as to the fire station update.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple of updates this evening. The fire station, the detailed survey that I mentioned last meeting has been completed and delivered to the project design team. They are also in the process of preparing the NOI to be submitted to the Conservation Commission. And finally, the designer team actually met today with the fire department in a almost day-long focus session to make sure that our program is accommodated in the eventual design plan. So good progress being made there, but happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Other questions for the town manager? And seeing none. Good. Thank you.
I do have update on High Street bridge closure or road closure. And I'm going to keep reminding folks via this forum and also the town website and Facebook and personal visits and so forth. But we still anticipate a closure of High Street at the High Street Bridge down by the Lincoln Athletic Club. That timeline still appears to be June 15th for the closure and a reopening on or about October 15th. So about a 4-month period will be without a bridge in that location. Therefore, the road will be closed. There'll be full access to all residences, obviously from both sides, but there will be no crossing of the town river at that location. And all I have other than that is work is gearing up today and this week with utility relocations to accommodate the bridge removal and rebuilding. So that project is underway and making progress as planned.
Well, thank you very much. Other questions for the town manager with respect to the High Street matter? And seeing none. I thank you very much, Mr. Dutton.
Thank you.
We have no discussion scheduled for this evening, nor, well, I will ask if there are any committee reports to be offered. I believe we've had committee meetings in the interim, but thank you. Legislation for action. First item on our agenda is Order FY 23-048. This is the acceptance of a grant from the Land and Water Conservation Fund in connection with the Stiles and Hart site. As the councilors know, we will require to undertake an emergency resolution with respect to this matter for purposes of securing the funding on a timely basis. And there are actually 3 steps that we need to undertake in sequence to accomplish that tonight. The first is we need to accept the emergency preamble, and we'll have a vote for that. The council must then vote to, if it sees fit, to suspend the requirement for a second reading of this matter. And then we will have a roll call vote on the measure itself. So I would entertain a motion for approval of the emergency preamble.
Motion. Second.
Motion and a second. And is there any discussion? Councilor Gallagher.
I mean, are we going to vote on ALA first or?
That is the order but we need to undertake the emergency preamble first. Thank you.
Actually, if I could, Mr. President, I think there are 2 different orders relative to Stiles and Hart, so it might be a little confusing to some counselors. The acceptance of the grant is your vote. That's ready to go under a normal procedure. What I referred to, I think in an email, is the paperwork required is the emergency vote, and that is I think your second matter. I believe the first matter on your agenda is Order FY 23-048.
So we can proceed with the 048. Okay.
Yep.
All right. So with respect to order FY 23-048, acceptance of the Land and Water Conservation Fund grant with respect to Stiles and Hart Parkland project. And I note that this measure has been previously approved by the Finance Committee by a vote of 5-0. I believe that the Budget and Finance Committee just this evening,
We voted.
am I correct?
Yeah, we voted 2-0 to recommend.
To recommend approval. Thank you so much. I would ask then, I would consider a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Thank you very much. Any discussion? And seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Miss Robinson,
yes,
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
and Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. And now we can move to the emergency preamble. And as I've explained, this is necessary in order to secure funding on a timely basis with respect to the requirements that are imposed by the Commonwealth. And I would entertain a motion for approval of the emergency preamble.
So moved.
We did that.
Thank you.
No, this is for the second one.
But Brad made that motion before, and I seconded it before we went
Oh.
back to the other one.
All right. But we still have a motion and a second. Belt and suspenders. All right, thank you very much. And if I would ask for a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Miss Robinson,
Sorry, yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. George,
Yes.
and Mr. McKinnon.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. The second part of the procedure is we would need to vote to suspend the rules that are set forth in section 18 of the council's rules and procedures in order to dispense with a second reading of this matter.
So
moved. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on that matter?
So this means, Mr. President, we don't refer this to any committee. Is that
That's correct. That's correct. Thank you very much. So if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. McKinnon,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Dr. Perry.
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Miss Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
and Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. And finally, consideration of the emergency order itself. And I would once again entertain a motion for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Gallagher,
Yes.
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
Miss Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
And Mr. McKinnon.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you very much. And moving on to order FY 23-049, release of trustee and acceptance of funds, release of all restrictions and covenants, and declaration of restrictions for 1185 Pleasant Street. If I could, please, I'd like to defer for comment to our town manager.
Mr. President, this order is relative to the property upon which the fire station is being planned and constructed, and it releases an existing restriction implemented by a town meeting and imposes a restriction that allows for the public safety use and also the open space use of that property.
I thank you. I would entertain a motion for referral to the Budget and Finance committees.
Motion.
Motion and
Second.
a second. Thank you very much. Is there any discussion?
Quick question on that.
Yes, Counselor George.
From my perspective, I think we should be referring this to rules and procedures. I don't see anything of a financial nature on this. Am I incorrect on that?
I would,
No, well, there is one element of it that is the acceptance of funds.
Okay.
So,
I don't,
and it probably should, that part of it also, it looks like it's being packaged as one thing.
Okay.
Part of it will have to go through finance.
Okay.
There is an acceptance of funds.
my recommendation would to refer it to both rules and procedures and budget and finance committees.
A motion for referral to the Rules and Procedures Committee as well.
Yep.
Second that.
Motion and a second. If we could have a vote, please, on the matter of the additional referral to the Rules and Procedures Committee.
Yep. Mr. McKinnon,
yes.
Mr. George.
Yes.
Dr. Perry,
Yes.
Mr. Moore,
Yes.
Mr. Chase,
Yes.
Miss Robinson,
Yes.
Mr. Lindy,
Yes.
and Mr. Gallagher.
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
I thank you. And a motion for approval of the I'm sorry, we've already made a recommendation for approval of the referral to the Budget and Finance Committees. If we could just have a vote on that additional referral, please.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Miss Robinson?
yes,
Mr. Chase?
Yes,
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
And Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
I thank you. Moving on to order FY 23-050, capital plan leasing obligation. And once again, please, if you would, Mr. Dutton.
Mr. President, this is our, what it has become and will become our annual leasing order out of our capital stabilization fund. You can see the equipment listed there is on a lease purchase agreement, and you can see the, for instance, the fire engine lease pay 5 of 5. This is the last payment for the new fire engine. Radio equipment lease is third year of 5 for the body cameras for the police department. The purchase of the old high school building is the 4th year of 12 years, and so on. So this, I would recommend referral to Budget and Finance Committee.
I would entertain a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you for referral of Budget and Finance Committees. Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Dr. Perry? Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes,
Miss Robinson?
yes,
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
And Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
thank you. Order FY 23-051, transfer order restoration of Parthenon frieze. Mr. Dutton, if you would kindly.
Thank you, Mr. President. This would CPC funded money would go towards the restoration of friezes that are currently in the old town hall and were gifted to us. Honestly, I'm not quite sure where they were gifted from, but they have been in the town possession for some time, and we would like to make sure that they are appropriately preserved and hopefully hung in this building when they're completed.
Thank you. I would entertain a motion for referral to the Budget and Finance Committees.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Thank you. Is there any discussion? And seeing none, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Miss Robinson?
yes,
Mr. Chase?
Yes,
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
And Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
thank you. Before us is petition P 2023-024, town election warrant. The town election is scheduled to take place on April 22nd, 2023. And no action is necessary just for our first reading tonight, but I will ask for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. President, what are we approving?
We're just
keep it at the council
approving the
level.
town warrant. We're keeping it here
Keep it
at
at
the
the
council.
council level.
Yeah.
Yes, at the
Okay, I
council
just wanted
level.
to make sure. Yep.
That's
okay.
right. And we could have a roll call vote, please.
Sure. Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes,
Miss Robinson?
yes,
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
And Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
thank you. We can move on to citizen comments. If there are any citizens who would care to address the council, please step forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. With the council's indulgence, I'd just like, if I may, give you some personal experience with the aggregation program. Prior to moving to Bridgewater, I lived in Pembroke. And I had 20 years' experience in town government on many boards. And I was elected selectman for 9 years. And during that time, we put into practice this aggregation program. So if I were living in Pembroke today versus living in Bridgewater, I would be saving about $600 a year on my electric bill. I have nothing fancy in my house. It's just a regular run-of-the-mill house, if you will. So I just want you to understand that that could be the savings should this plan ever be put into place, which I certainly hope it is. I sent a letter in February to the town manager about this program because I realized that Bridgewater didn't have it. And there were many towns in the Commonwealth that did, and I was familiar with Pembroke. I was put in touch with the Energy Committee, and I've been working with Carlton. I've given them a lot of information, and some of that information is a copy of Pembroke's agreement with Colonial Power, which is their supplier. And they are, right now, I understand from friends on the board, that they are negotiating a renewal of that agreement. And the beauty of this is that every citizen in Bridgewater would have the opportunity to go on the plan or to not go on the plan. And if something happens when you're on the plan that you decide you don't want to be on it anymore, you notify the town, an official that you will designate, and they will take you off the plan. And Colonial Power worked with the town of Pembroke to develop the agreement that they have in place. I think I said Carlton has a copy of that. And they're doing another one now. And they have been looking at about 11 cents a kilowatt hour, which is 1/3 the price of National Grid. Now, when I moved here, I had to go with National Grid. Well, having a little knowledge in that area, I contracted with a private company. And in order to get a reasonable cost per kilowatt hour, I had to sign up for 3 years at 18 cents a kilowatt hour. But I'm still saving a lot of money if I hadn't done that and stayed with National Grid. So if Bridgewater accepts this plan and I am asked if I want to get in on it, I'm certainly going to be one of the first people in line to do so. Some of the things I did in Pembroke was working with the town manager there, who knows Mr. Dutton and sends his regards, as I said to him earlier. We put in a single stream recycling program for the whole town. And I also was the chairman of the Council on Aging Board for 5 years. So I'm very interested in government, and I'm very happy to have the opportunity that you've given me tonight to give you some of my input. And if Carlton would ask me to assist him in any way, I don't know if he is planning on that, but I would certainly volunteer. So I hope the council takes this presentation that was so wonderfully put together and comes to a quick, if that's possible, in government, a quick decision, because I just think it's a win-win deal, because your plans for solar power are wonderful, but you can be doing that at the same time that you put this plan in place. And the citizens of Bridgewater are going to win on that one. And then when you put in your solar systems that you decide to put in, they're probably going to win again. So this isn't one versus the other. This should be looked at as two separate parallel efforts to get control of the cost of electricity. So thank you for your courtesy. I've really enjoyed being here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Stone. Other citizens for citizen comment? It appears not. I would move directly to council comments. And if I could begin with
No
Councilor
comments from me
McKinnon?
tonight, Mr. President.
Nothing this evening? Thank you. Councilor George?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a couple things. Thank you very much, Dr. Hunt, for your presentation. It's kind of ironic, as Mr. Stone pointed out. I think myself and my wife just contracted maybe 4 months ago with a private supplier. Got a similar deal, but obviously, to Mr. Stone's point, I think we're contracted for 3 years. So giving people options to be able to, get a better rate on their power and save some money, I think we need to look at really closely. And if we've got something that we can get started very quickly, I'd be all for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Perry?
Thank you. Again, just thank you to Carlton for his presentation tonight. It was well put together, and I thank you for your efforts. And again, I enjoyed listening to Mr. Stone, so hopefully we'll put his knowledge and efforts into use in other areas that volunteerism, that would be great. Other than that, that's all I have as well, so thank you.
I thank you very much. Councilor Moore?
Similar to the comments that have already been said, I'm also excited about this idea to potentially save money for the residents. And then I'd say maybe at like a higher level, I'm also just excited about the fact that the last couple of meetings we're seeing more and more, sort of ideas come before the council about ways to improve the town or bring just more value back to our neighbors. So I'm excited to see that trend, and I hope we see that continue in upcoming meetings. Thanks.
I thank you. Councilor Robinson?
I'll keep it brief. I apologize, I missed the first part of it, but I'm looking forward to hearing the recording on the presentation. So thank you, Mr. Hunt. And that's it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Councilor Lindy?
Again, another thank you to Carlton Hunt. Just good information. It was an education for me, and hopefully it can work out for all of our residents here in town. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Gallagher?
Thank you, Mr. President. I have nothing tonight, so.
Very good. Thank you. I would just like to add as well my thanks to Dr. Hunt for his presentation. We're always greatly enlightened by your comments, and certainly this is no exception this evening. And as well, Mr. Stone, thank you for your input. I think it's very helpful for us to have an understanding of your personal experience on this matter. The only other comment I'd like to add is that next Tuesday on March 14th, the town will feature the annual State of the Town address, which I will join Mr. Dutton, and we will undertake that ceremony at the library beginning at 6 p.m. And hopefully citizens interested will have an opportunity to join us for that. I look forward to it. Otherwise, I do thank everyone who has attended this evening, both here in person and remotely. And we, as always, appreciate your input. And that's really all I have to say. So I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
Council Chase, I forgot one thing. Could I just remind my fellow
ahead.
councilors that tomorrow night, we were all invited to attend the school committee public hearing on the budget.
Thank you. That's very good. Thank you for adding that. And if we could have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Thank you very much. Although we'll have a roll call vote, please.
Mr. McKinnon?
Yes.
Mr. George?
Yes.
Dr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mr. Chase?
Yes.
Ms. Robinson?
Yes.
Mr. Lindy?
Yes.
Mr. Gallagher?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Thank you. We stand adjourned.